The two pictures of the house, many of you will remember, were his office. On the far side, my left, that was about the time he moved in. That was 1965, and I think you came in 61.
61, right.
Yeah. And this one was taken last week. And you can see the house has changed very little. And for those that didn't know, that is lot number 1 of the village of St. Thomas. That is the first lot. The lots were numbered all the ways up to the fire station and down the other way, and across the street were the highest numbered lots, and they were actually the first ones sold. And they were sold to Mr. Winrick. That's the end of the history lesson. Here's a picture of Dr. when he was married, Dr. William and his wife. And also, I think that's your school picture, isn't it, Doctor?
Yes, right.
And we have a few pictures of him in the old office, which many of you remember that desk, I'm sure. And we don't want to go forward, do we, there? I don't know who that is on the side of him.
Some young guy.
When you look at those two guys, you think 80 years of medical service to our township. Thanks to somebody who is here tonight. Where'd you go? That's your mother's bottles.
Yeah.
This is from Wilson's, and if you can't read it, it's 1976. And that was one of the doctor's prescriptions. And her son is sitting in the ovens. Stand up for a second. Now everybody's wondering what the doctor's doing after he retired. And you gotta love the phone. And here he is in his field cutting his woods, his favorite place. And what were you planting?
Onions.
Onions.
Favorite thing. And have a fence around because of the deer.
If any of you were at the Linglestown 250th, he was the marshal of the parade. And that was him sitting on the back of the car, waving at his fans. I think this was after the parade. Here he is. And if I have it right, it's you and your brother on the right-hand side, and you and your father on the left-hand side?
Yeah, that's when I was in Navy, you're right, yeah.
And that's in his Navy uniform.
Yeah.
And Scott is in the back. That's the third brother. And this is Scott with his daughters and the doctor. And that was at your retirement?
That was 90th birthday.
90th birthday. Not just a spring chicken.
Yeah.
This picture, this is out of the Boston Globe, April 18th, 1968. The red arrow, if you can't read it, is pointing to runner number 622, William S. Gordon, MD, Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. That's the Boston Marathon before it was a marathon. And how many races were you in, Doctor?
15, you mean altogether?
Yeah.
35.
35 marathons. But he wasn't alone. There was somebody else that was also in the Boston Marathon. And I think we all recognize him. And this is the picture that hung in the office after you retired, right? Or was it before?
Just before we retired.
Retired.
That was,
And now I want to open the mic to the good doctors. And I think that William has a few things for us.
okay. It's really an honor to be here. You know, how could you ever expect this, really? You know, Luckily, I lived this long, I can get this, I don't know. How'd they ever get to Linglestown? How in the world? I come from western Pennsylvania, Westmoreland County, steel mills, coke ovens, Latrobe, Chet, Greensburg, Arnold Palmer area.
You can move it.
Yeah, okay. And what happened was I interned at Harrisburg Hospital, and Dr. Weber, who came here in '48, delivered so many babies, he decided he wanted to become an obstetrician. His wife was a doctor, so he took a residency at Harrisburg Hospital, and she ran the office. Something about her running the office, she had the patients watch her children while she ran the office. Nobody does that nowadays. We had a little gate between the living room and the office, and she'd take the patient in and everybody else would watch the children. I'd never do that now. But anyway, so I met Otto Weber down at Harrisburg Hospital, and I was a intern. He was last year residency, and he said, "Where are you going to go?" And I said, "We're going to go to western Pennsylvania, maybe Somerset County, so I want to go to a rural area." He said, "Why don't you come to Linglestown?" And I said, "Where's Linglestown?" I said, "Well, it's about 12 miles from here." So wife Doris and Otto's wife and Bill Wilson, the druggist, if you all remember Bill Wilson, druggist, we all went out to eat. Guess where we ate? Eagle Hotel. First time I was in the Eagle Hotel, which was, we had crab cakes. So we went home and talked about it. Decided that, well, we might as well go out. That's how I got there. And I tell you, this was, Otto Weber was, he wanted to go down to New Jersey and join a group down there. And so he started to give me all these instructions. He said, "Do you want me to tell you what to do?" And I said, "Well, sure." Because when you go to school, like you all know, you learn everything in school. You learn that you really don't know everything until you get out in the real world. So he sits down with me day after day and tells me all these things. He says, "First of all, I want you to raise your office, don't have to, raise your office calls from 3 to 4. And house calls from 6 to 7. And Blue Shield, Blue Cross will pay you $100 for a boy and $90 for a girl because of circumcision. House calls will be 7. He said, "I have 2 types of house calls." I said, "You do?" The 2 types. He said, "I have the type people emergency get sick at night. And the other type that every Sunday morning, there were any nursing homes. There was Pope's in Colonial Park, and there was Mrs. Schaefer up where Tractor Supply is. She had a big farmhouse up there, and it was the only 2 nursing homes. So every Sunday he had appointments with people in their home from 9 to 12, and he'd go see them, and they couldn't get around. And instead of nursing homes, they had people took care of their family at home back in those days. So I'd go, and that was the most enjoyable time. I tell you, I learned more about that area out there. They told me all these stories, all about how they were on a farm and they had to go out and work, and how the farmers used to go up in the mountain, 5 or 10 acres up the mountain, that said, get their firewood and get theirs. A lot of people went to market at that time. Told me about all the rides to the market. They got up at 3 o'clock in the morning on Wednesday from Westhampton Township, get there in the morning, set everything up, and come home in the afternoon about 3, and they'd sleep on the way home. The horse knew where to stop. I guess that'd be true. But anyway, it was, I tell you, that was more, I was thinking about the nursing homes now, the way it is now. Those people really, despite the lack of technology that we have now, because when I got there, there was no ultrasounds, no CAT scans, no open heart surgery, no joint replacement. They did have ultrasound then, but that's about it. So with all this advanced nursing homes came in the 60s, that's when, 70s, that's when, so Leader? Yeah, Leader built all the nursing homes. But I thought this, looking back, this is the best way to be taken care of is by your family. I tell you, it's hard on the family sort of, but it's really a good way to be taken care of. Because not the nursing, I have a lot of criticism of nursing homes, but they have so many people there, and bed sores are a big thing. Because I think of President Bush, and I like President Bush. I bet she didn't have a bed sore. You know why? He had a private duty nurse checking every hour to see if the bed was wet. He wouldn't even ever get it. Well, they can't do that. Nursing home, all these people here, they can't do that. And that's just not a, I guess a lot of you people knew Lee Campbell, didn't you?
Yeah.
Lee Campbell? He told me, he moved down there, he had trouble with walking. He told me a good story about it. He said, one thing about this place is, when you ring the bell at night, you don't come for about 45 minutes. I said, well, okay. So what happened one night, they didn't come, so he decided he couldn't walk. So he decided to get up, and he fell. And the nurse came about 45 minutes later. He was underneath the bed because he was trying to get up, and he was underneath the bed. And she asked him, she said, Mr. Campbell, what are you doing underneath the bed? It's I'm fixing the springs. If anybody knew Lee, that was Lee Campbell. Anyway, that all started to die out. And the leader came along, built homes, and that slowly died. Plus, the older people passed away, so nursing came in, and even that was a problem. I went there up to Leaders, that one that's up on Londonderry Road. It was a Leaders then. I saw 3 of my patients were half out of bed. The bed was all wet. And I went to the nursing station. I said, what's going on? She said, well, 2 of the aides are 18 years old. Both got sick last night. She said they probably had a date. So she was there all by herself all that night. She had to give out medications and so forth. So, you know, it's hard to, nursing homes get a lot of criticism, but it's hard to take care of people like that when they can't move, they can't help themselves. It's just a hard thing. So I thought back that the way it was in the old days was really nice. It's really nice. Mrs. Schaefer up in where Tractor Supply was, she had a big farmhouse. And in that farmhouse, she had 19 people downstairs. Then she had widowers, men that couldn't, their wives died, upstairs. And the daughter-in-law cooked the meals, and her son cut everybody's hair. But she had local women around there, the children had grown up, to help take care of the patients. And they did just as good as a nurse, really, because all it does is take a lot of hard work. You got to lift people and things like that. And that was, they closed her down for one reason. She didn't have an elevator. They closed her down. I thought, boy, if she was back today, she'd be the #1 nursing home around. Really, she was really good. But then they had Popes. Popes was pretty good too. But then these house calls started to stop in the 70s because all these people died. So that sort of died out then. But then Dr. Weber is gone by that time. He was gone. So as far as the office was concerned, he told me a lot of good things. The house calls, I tell you, house calls were almost every night. I wasn't used to that. Didn't have cell phones then. You get done with the office and you had the house call. And my first delivery was on my second night there. It was at home. And somebody out in the township called me and said that she was having a baby. I said, I don't know how to get there. I said, I don't know how to get there. She said, we'll send somebody in. So I went out and followed this person in, and we delivered the baby. And I never made out a birth certificate before. So I was making that, and I said, Father. She said, I'm not saying. And I said, well, you've got to say something. I thought you had to make it all out. She said, I'm not saying. I said, well, she said, well, just put that you don't know. I said, well, that won't look good for you if I say I don't know. You don't know. I said, don't say that. Don't say that. So I put unknown. Well, I shouldn't have done that, but I put it down there unknown. So that was the first. That's the first. That first delivery I had was in a home. And deliveries were. I had a couple of them. A couple that couldn't help it. They were just too fast. I had one young girl. She had 4 children, and I delivered the 4th one. And she came to the office. I said, "Look, I'm not going to go to your home again." She said, "Well, I don't like hospitals." So she called me, and the baby was already born. I said, she didn't go home again. So I went up and cleaned everything up and did everything. And I said, well, maybe you ought to go and get checked. She said, what for? I said, well, I don't know either. Everything's okay. Because she was like an expert at it. She did it herself. So, you know, I mean, it were things like that. And then as far as our office goes, the funny thing we had, We did have appointments at first. Well, you weren't there at first, Sunday, that's right. But anyway, the guy would come in and say, how long do I have to wait? And we'd say, well, about a half an hour. And he'd say, well, I'm going to Dago Hotel. Call me up there. So we had to go to the office. Then we called the Dago Hotel. And he took that. It was really something. But anyway, then we started to get appointments, and it worked pretty good that way. But then all of a sudden, we sort of became an emergency room. There were 3 emergency rooms: the polyclinic, and the osteopathic, and Harrisburg Hospital. But a lot of people would come to the office, especially on Saturday afternoon. They'd be working up the park, they'd cut their hands. So pretty soon I started to do all this sewing of wounds. So pretty soon we almost became an emergency room because they knew I'd do it. The swimming pool up there, kids would fall and getting out of the pool, they'd cut themselves across here, or they'd slip or something like that. And I didn't know, evidently nowadays, if you sew somebody up that's under 18, you got to get permission from their parents. It's against the law. I didn't know that. But nobody bothered me, so I guess it was okay. And I always, you say, have your doctor take the sutures out in 5 days, or have me come back here and not do it. So it actually became sort of, and I sort of liked that because I like doing, somebody goes in with a cut and so forth. You clean it all up and it's now sutured real nice. It's sort of like being a carpenter and making a nice place. But I had one fellow come in, he was a farmer out in West Andover one time. Nice guy. He was the type of guy, when he told you something, he would always say how he felt. If he didn't like something, he'd tell you if he did like it. He was real honest guy, and he came in, he said, I got my hand caught in a corn picker. And I looked at it and I said, well, I can't sew it up. He said, why not? I said, because you have tendons underneath there and I'm not a hand doctor and I can't do it. He said, well, if you don't do it, I'm going home and put a bandage on. Because I noticed another thing about the old people around Linglestown, they didn't like hospitals. And I think it was because in the old days, when you went to the hospital, you usually died. I think that was the reason for it. They didn't want to go to the hospital. I said, why don't you go down? So I called down there and said, I'm going home. So I said, I knew, I was going to say his name. I knew he wouldn't sue me. He wasn't that type of guy. So I sewed it up and it turned out it was okay. It was things like that. But as far as, then we used to get, then there were really some rambunctious bars around there. We'll name all the bars. Now, I noticed down there every place else are shooting everybody now, but back in those days they used to fight. They just had fist fights. They'd bring them in the office all of a sudden, so those people on. In fact, I did a lot of those, but it sort of got more and more emergency room type things taken care of. But I think Dudley, when you were there, they were still doing that, weren't they? Yeah, right. Yeah. Then the house calls were interesting too. That was the one at noontime, a young lady, they were patients of mine. She said, my husband's away, he's a railroader, don't have a car, I got a problem in my house. I said, what's the problem? She said, well, I'll tell you when you get here, but could you come over? So I went over at noontime, and the problem was, her cat got up in the window there and got caught on the screen and got its claws in, and when they were caught, she couldn't get it out. I said, I don't know what, she said, I don't know what I'm going to do, and I was thinking, I don't know what I'm going to do either. So I had this drug in my bag. It was a drug for vomiting and nausea and made you sleepy. I said, I'll tell you what, I don't know how much to give a cat. I'm going to give a small dose. I like 3 days. So I gave the cat and all of a sudden, about 2 minutes, it fell loose, just fell down. I might be dead. So I said, but I woke up luckily. I listened. In fact, I even listened to it hard before I woke up. Anyway, so she was all happy and everything. So it was another house call. Another house call. I usually get them on Sunday afternoon up on Old 22 before 81 was done. Must be this. They call me and said there's a fellow up by the tall timbers. He has a problem. So I went up and here's a big Cadillac outside. And the chauffeur was standing in front of it. He said, he's in there. And I went in, this guy had his coat draped over it, a real expensive hat on. Introduced himself. He said, I'm a lawyer. I'm going back to New York. I was in Pittsburgh. He said, I played lacrosse at Princeton. And I guess in lacrosse, you would have pulled your hands up like this all the time. And he got a chronic dislocation in his shoulder. And he said, it's dislocated. It had been dislocated so many times, there's a certain movement, that Coker maneuver, slapped right back in place in about 1 second. And he said, how much? I said, $7. He said, $7? He said, like my orthopedic surgeon charged me $100 for that. I said, well, that's what I charged. Well, he did send me a check for $100 next week. Next week he sent me that. And I had another house call, I remember, it was during the flood in '72. And the state police called me and said he was a patient. They found out I was a patient. When he's up in his house, he's chased his wife and his sister out of the house, he has a gun. And I knew the guy, and that was when the flood was. And I had a hard time getting there. It took me about 45 minutes to get there. I got there. There was a plain clothesman out there, and there was a couple of state police cars. So I just knocked on the door. He said, "Come on in." And I went in there, sitting with a gun across his thing. I said, "How you doing, so and so?" He said, "I'm doing fine." I said, "Well, what's going on?" He said, "Oh, they get excited." And I said, "Well, you know, they're excited outside there too." I said, "The police are there." He said, "I know." He said, I just got excited." He said, "That's all." He said, "They get upset about everything." So I said, "Where'd you get the gun?" And he told me all about his gun. So I said, "Why don't you give me the gun and we'll just go out and maybe talk to the police." So I took his gun, he gave me his gun, we went out and talked to the police, that was the end of it. And I knew the guy. I would never do that nowadays. I'd never do that nowadays. I'd be afraid to do that nowadays, but back in those days, people weren't shooting each other then. And it seems like everybody's shooting her. That's the same with the barroom fights. You know, not everybody shoots everybody or does something in the bar. Now, those days they used to fight with their fists. That's what they did. They'd bring them in from, there were a couple bars around there that sort of active like that. And at those same places, well, two of them aren't there anymore. The Eagle Hotel's still there. That's a nice call. All the bars seem to be calm right now. No, but downtown's where they have all the problems, not on Broadway. But that was a big thing, selling people up for bar fights and so forth. But delivering babies was a lot of fun like that. That was good. But all those house calls that I made back in the meeting the people on Sunday morning, I thought to myself, I wish we could do that now. That we've lost that idea because everybody's working now. They can't take. I know my mother, probably maybe your mothers, took care of their mother or dad, things like that. That's what they did back then. Everybody did that, and I thought that's so much nicer than being in a. It's hard on the people. It's not easy to do that. It's hard on people taking care of us because I took care of my wife and she was sick, and it was hard. It wasn't easy, but anyway, it was. That's some of the things that we did. If you want any questions, I'll answer the question I can.
I have a question behind you.
Oh.
I'm curious in the audience if there are people here that Dr. Gordon was there when you were born. Stand up. Are there people here that when you were born, Dr. Gordon was your first vision? Bravo, thank you.
Yeah. Okay, let me bring the mic over. Here you go.
Dr. Gordon, I'm Marilyn Dowling, and I don't think you remember the name, but back in the 70s, I was in charge of the Fresh Air Fund children from New York City, and you treated those children free of charge whenever any of them came to Harrisburg and got sick. And I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart for the years and years of service that you gave to those children who had so little when they came and went home, with a real appreciation of what kindness and generosity is all about. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Anybody else?
Did you deliver the babies right in your office?
No, not in the office, but at home, a lot of them. Most of it at home wasn't on purpose. It was just a fast delivery, that's all. But, yeah, that was sort of, delivering babies is sort of a happy time. You know, that's, everybody's happy and so forth. And then it got to the point when, I quit in '72. John Bennett and I, we graduated together from internship. We were sitting there one day and we thought all everybody was getting sued. All the big organizations were getting sued. We said, John, you know, we can see the lawyer asking us, did you go to a special school to deliver babies? We'd say, no. Well, but to think of it, my wife's family had 9 children, everyone delivered to home. Back in the old days, everybody was delivered to home. Now, there's a lot of problems in it, but it wasn't, delivering a baby is like falling off a log, really, in a sense. Yeah. It was a happy time. By the time Dudley came along, I think we quit that, really. Plus, it interfered with office hours. You'd have a full office, then you had to go down to the hospital, wait, and they'd go out of labor. You had to filled up in the evening. You didn't know what to do. So it was an inconvenience, really. So, hate to stop that, but we did. But, you know, I don't know how much, to say, I don't know how much they charge to have a baby right now. I don't know. I don't remember, we got 100 for a boy, circumcision, and 90 for a girl.
Yeah.
I just wonder how much.
It's more than that for an aspirin, though.
I'm rather curious about maybe some of the transitional things that you saw happening. I would imagine there's more than a singular moment of medical transition that you were able to witness.
Oh, yeah, when I got to Linglestown, you know, there was no chemotherapy. There was an ultrasound then. There's no CAT scans or anything like that. There's no cardiac surgery. I tell you, heart disease, it was like taking your car in the garage. You needed a new spark plug, but they couldn't open the hood to get it. You know, because you couldn't do anything to the heart. You know, you couldn't touch it. Then Musser came to town. He started to do open heart surgery, and now they don't even do open heart. They can do it by putting a catheter in and everything. It's amazing. I got to see all that. Knee replacements, replaced everything, really. You know, shoulder replacements. I was there at the time, and everything started to get better. Medicine. It's really, everything started to blow up. It's just, and that's another thing. When I started, there were a lot of general practitioners. Now there's probably less. Everybody's a specialist. And, you know, why? Because we have all these, like, I had my hip replaced about 8 years. It's amazing. I can't believe this. Dr. Lippy did it. He has a good reputation. When I woke up, he said, "Get up off the table." They had a walker there. And they had a walker there. He said, "Walk as far as you can." So we walked up the hall, came back. Then we all went down the room and sort of sat there and moved our legs around. So by 2 o'clock in the afternoon, we were home. It was like going to the dentist. We were home 2 o'clock. The first week I used a walker. Second week I used a cane. The third week I could walk like there was nothing wrong with me. You know, it's amazing. I think that's, in the old days, you couldn't do that. Once you broke your hip when I first started, you were crippled forever. You were in a wheelchair. And being in a wheelchair, when you get older, you get down the hill real fast. Inactivity is bad for everybody. You just don't, it's just not good for you, really. But I saw that happen, so in a way I got started in a golden age. You think that back in 1887, we didn't even know what bacteria were. We didn't didn't even know what bacteria were. And here now, and penicillin came out in World War over in England before the war. That was a big secret. We kept it from the Nazis, and penicillin changed everything. All those guys on the battlefield lived because of it. They got shots of penicillin. They didn't pick people up right away in the battlefield. They had to wait till the battle was over. That might be 12 hours. You know, some guy was laying there, and they have a medic go around, and if you're real bad, they'd give you a shot of morphine, and if you're going to die, they'd give you a shot of morphine. I saw all that happen. It was really amazing. I was in at the right time.
Transition was medication. How when my father started, there was really not much you could treat. There were a few things that you could give medications for, but not very many. The progress with antibiotics and treating hypertension and diabetes and all these things now that we can treat, like I said, cancers, it's just been remarkable what the ability now to treat things has gone to from really not much. And that he really was there even before I was, to see that progression of and innovations in medications that are now what we have now that are really done a lot of people some good. People live longer.
That's our nursing home problem too. People are living longer. Well,
No one lives forever.
That's right. When you had a heart disease before, my dad died when he was 76, back in 1972. He was a cardiac invalid for 5 years. All he could do was take nitroglycerin when you got chest pain, sit down and rest. There's no medicine for it. There's almost just couldn't do anything about it. So you got.
I do Meals on Wheels with Doc Gordon. And believe me, if you listen to the stories he tells in the 2 hours that we're together, everybody in the world would want to do Meals on Wheels. I'm laughing so much I almost run off the road. The story he tells about every place that we go. It's unbelievable.
Yeah, dude. Yeah, that's right. Yeah. That's Tom. Yes.
Do you remember what you treated on your very first day in Linglestown? You remember what kind of cases came in your first day?
Yeah, my first day in Legal, you mean my first office day? Yeah. Well, what I saw, I tell you, it was me coming to Linglestown. It was like I came and I was the first time doctor, and I slowly built up my practice. I was all of a sudden when I went the first night I was running, because he had a full practice there, and most of the people in there for high blood pressure, heart, diabetes, things like that, or sinus problems. That's another thing. What I wasn't used to was cons calls at night. I mean, phone calls. First night I was on call. I was on call all the time until Dudley came along. I was on call all the time. And first night some young girl said her nose was stuffy. This is 1 o'clock in the morning. I said, well, why don't you come to the office in the morning? She said, what am I going to do tonight? And I said, well, do you have nose drops there? Things like that. I mean, so I thought to myself, is this going to be all forever for the rest of my life? I thought, what did I get into? You know, it was used to getting in. Dr. Weber, you know, he was really a nice guy. He really told me everything to do. It sort of coached me in it, because he knew what it was. Because it wasn't like I was, like I said, coming into town and starting out slow. I just was like, I had to start running the first thing, because there was all the patient load and everything. But it was different, really. But and I got to see how our culture changed. But another problem was when the culture changed, a lot of mothers went to work, young mothers. My big problem was they'd bring their child in and say, look, my child has a cold, and I have to be at work. And I would say, well, you know, it's a cold. And they'd say, what do you mean it's a cold? I said, well, it's a cold. And antibiotics don't help it. Well, what are you going to do? I said, well, you just have to wait till it gets better. And that got to be a problem, because they got a lot of, one time I did call an antibiotic, and then The mother called me and bawled me out for being so expensive. That was a problem too, when all the young girls went to work. That's why mothers went to work. That became so socially I saw our country change. You know, I saw some women would say, you know, I'm going to go to work now in the cafeteria because I can be off the kids with my son in the summertime. And that slowly happened. So really the patient load, the older patients weren't around anymore, it was younger people. The whole culture had changed a little bit. Some of the older people never wanted to go to the hospital or anything like that. And, it was just a different world. I saw it change over the years, just in the way our culture happened.
Is there a singular piece of medical advice either of you would like to share with us on doing well, other than an apple a day?
I tell you, what's good advice? Don't sit around all the time. That's bad. They actually proven that you sit around all the time and don't do anything. You don't have to be an athlete or anything, but keep active. I think that's the best thing you can do.
I see him at the Friendship Center on that big electrical machine.
Yeah. It's my
Oh,
favorite.
there's no way I could do what you do with the gym.
So let's, you know, I couldn't run anymore, so I got the elliptical machine.
Oh,
Because that's, you know, that's another thing that's good. The Friendship Center, there's a bunch of us guys who are all in our 80s or 90s. That's a social thing too. That's another thing when you get older. It's good to have a lot of friends to talk to. And in fact, we just went out to lunch yesterday. Everybody was over 88 years old. All these guys going up and sitting down, getting up out of their chair.
didn't you get stopped when you first started running in Linglestown? You were running in the police and asked you where you were doing?
Well, what happened was when Lee Campbell we started running, there weren't any running clothes or anything. So I'd be running along the road and somebody'd always stop and say, "You have a problem?" So, you know, or you're running for help or something like that. And Lee Campbell, a friend of mine, maybe you guys know Lee. You know Lee Campbell, one of you people know him. For some reason, he was about 6'2", a muscular guy. He wasn't made for long distance running at all. He saw me doing it. He said, "I'd like to do that too." And I said, "Lee, we'll move over and buy some shoes." With Shank and Tittle were the only place where North Shore sold that. And Lee had 15.5 feet of shoes. He couldn't get shoes, so you only end up with hush puppies. And those hush puppies for $10, or just in the first marathon run, everybody was saying, "Look, they have hush puppies." There were no running shoes. You're right. A lot of people, I'd be up, and the hunting season got to be a problem, because Lee and I used to run up in the mountain and top there. And hunters ride, so we'd down to Reservoir Park and run, do things like that. But Lee was an amazing guy. Well, Dudley used to run marathons too.
Well, not as many as you.
Yeah.
He's a tough act to follow, I'll tell you.
Yeah. One time we went to Boston, we couldn't find Dudley, he didn't finish. We couldn't find him. And the plane was going to leave at 6 o'clock, we were at the hotel, we're going to leave at 6 o'clock. And it was like 4 o'clock, where's Dudley? Couldn't find him. Anyway, I called the airport and said, "Well, we're cancel that flight," because that was the time it only cost $100 round trip to go from Harrisburg to Boston. Hotel was $25. Anyway, so I went down the lobby, and here I saw this guy down in the lobby, he's leaning up against a pillar. I looked at him, it was Dudley.
That was my first marathon. I was a senior in high school, and my sport was tennis. So I was playing tennis, but I thought we went up together, the whole family, and I thought, well, I'll just run half the race. I didn't even enter the race. I just got in there and started running. And my mother met me, at that point there were so few entries that you could go from stop to stop and see whoever you wanted to see. So my mother was there 13 miles, and I said, "I feel pretty good. I think I can go the rest of the way." Well, that lasted until about 20 miles, and then I hit the proverbial wall. And I basically crawled into the finish. I couldn't walk up the stairs for a week. It was not a good experience. The next year I trained a little better.
How many different pills did you have? I used to go to my doctor. Everything came out of that brown jar. I don't know.
Yeah, we had jars, you're right, Digitals, yeah. We had all these jars with different, you're right.
The blue pills and the red pills and the white pills.
No matter what you did there for, you had a little pills.
Put them in an envelope.
Yeah, a little.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, you're right about that. Well, not too much. Well, you know, I said, what Dr. Weber told me, he said that people come in once in a while and they said they want a shot out of that little red bottle of medicine. And B12 does help you if you have certain diseases. But they wanted B12. And there was nothing wrong with it. But they said it made him feel better. He said, when they come in, just give them a shot, because they insist on a shot. And I gave them a shot every time they came in. They went home, they felt better when they went home. That's what you call a placebo. So it was. So anyway, that's the story of Linglestown. A lot more stories, I guess I could tell.
You're going to talk about the doctors.
Huh?
The extra dollars, the other doctors are in.
Oh, Dr. McKittrick. Do you remember Dr. Light?
Yeah.
Do you guys in the storage side know about Dr. Light?
Used to hang out the pole
Did what?
at the barber shop, you know, it's right next to.
Yeah, right. And then it was Dr. Smith. He was there in 1860. He's the one that buried the slaves. The graves are still up on the other side of the mountain by the oil line that comes through. And West Hanover put a cover over them. They both died in 1865. But imagine him taking them from Linglestown, because the Underground Railroad. He took it from Linglestown all the way up to Platetown around the top of the mountain. Probably in a horse and buggy. We had to take their, because whether they used a casket or not, I don't know what they used.
Their doctor's office where the car wash is now, not the car wash, the
Well, where Dr. Dippin was and that's where Dr. Light was.
Actually, they have a bell. Right.
Oh, that's right, they had a bell there. I heard
That
that.
bell now down top of Dave.
Mark Bolton's place
Yeah.
on the Roof Street.
Dave, that bell down in Dave's house.
Dave Barlow.
Dave Barlow, that bell.
Oh, yeah, right, yeah. Well, Dave,
Oh, you ought to get it.
yeah, that's right.
They used to ring that bell when they wanted the.
When it went to the doctor, right. Yeah, no, yeah.
That sounds like a bell. We should find where it is.
Somebody doesn't think of anything. I can think of one thing.
I was just fortunate to come back to join my father. He really was an example, a positive example. Again, I had gone to medical school and residency and had all this knowledge, but to actually make it work for people that's the key, and that's what you have to learn. And I learned pretty soon I didn't know everything, and so you have to adapt, and you learn a lot from the people too, because they have the experience of their life, and I only have the experience of the book that I read. So and Dad really had the love of his patients. They adored him, and sometimes I tried to do things a little differently, and they didn't quite want to do that. But it was fine, because it was all just a matter of an approach to the same problem. So I really felt honored really to be with my dad and to spend all that time and learn a lot from him.
Thanks. Thank you.
I want to tell just two little anecdotes that I have from probably some of the most memorable things I had happen to me. One was to do with pregnancy. It was in the spring, and mother brought the daughter in who was going to Temple, and she'd been in Temple. She'd had this abdominal pain, and she came back home, and she came in the office, and she laid, and she sat there, and I said, well, why don't you lay down? She laid at the table, and it was obvious that she was pregnant. I mean, it was, you know how it looks when you're pregnant. So I examined her, she was having this lower abdominal pain, and we actually ended up doing a sort of a pelvic exam. And here the head of the baby is actually coming, you can see the hair and the head of the baby right there. And so we called the ambulance, called 911, and the ambulance was on the way, and I'm sitting there waiting. Oh man, don't have this. Don't let this happen. So it wasn't long. They were fairly quick, and they got her in the ambulance and got her to the hospital, and everything was great, and I didn't have to deal with that. So the second thing that happened that it's stuck in my memory is a family. They were vacationing in North Carolina, and the family brought their 9 or 10-year-old son in because he had an earache. So, he had an earache, and I'm looking in the kid's ear, and it's this white, fluffy thing in there. Well, kids, they stick things in their ears, so I thought, well, did he maybe stuck a Q-tip in there, or a cotton ball, or something in there? I didn't really know. So we had these tweezers that were like little trigger-like thing with a long metal, and at the very end there was a little tweezer that you could pick things that were inside of a canal, like an ear. So I went in and grabbed that thing and pulled it out, and when I pulled it out, here was about a quarter-inch round ball and at the end of the ball was a tick. It was a tick, it was an engorged tick, that when it was in there feeding, it got so engorged it couldn't get out because it was bigger than the ear canal. And that I almost fainted, really. I could not believe that this was in this kid's ear. So that was in the 90s, probably early 90s, when Lyme disease wasn't such a problem. It was more Rocky Mountain spotted fever was a possible issue. The child was fine and never did get sick, but I will never forget the image of that engorged tick coming out of that kid's ear.
I see Henry Greenwald. Henry probably has a lot of stories too. Right, Henry? Yeah.
He said you guys have a lot of stories too.
Yeah.
He thinks we do lots of
Well, this seems to be the type of presentation that we really like, and I think we'll have a lot more of them. People that came early and settled in this area. When you came here, Doctor, I think the population was under 10,000 in the township.
Yeah, well, there was Vista Drive was here, Riggle Road was down there a little bit, but there was cows actually below Riggle Road. Kissel Hill is, it was down there. And the whole Route 39 turned down to the underpass there. On Sunday morning, I used to run down there Sunday morning, and there would be one car on the road. You go all the way down and back, and there'd be nobody down there alone. Now we were coming over here from throughout the day. 39 is so crowded, and when they get that country club, with all the things going to the country club, they get Vartan's place back in the corner there, Progress and 39. It's going to be a total disaster. I think we have over 50,000 now. Do we have 50,000?
We're at 50,000. When the census is done next year, will officially be larger than the city of Harrisburg. And it won't be by a small number either.
But I think of all the modern things we have, the way older people were treated in the older days, I think was much better. People kept them at home. I think really with all the technology, because it's almost impossible. In a nursing home, one way to get good service is to be there every day. Be there every day and be looking around. That way you're going to get better service, really. And I feel so sorry because my experience down at the Jewish home down at 39, they had a lot of girls from Hades. They were big girls because it's hard. You got to handle people. Here's people dead weight, and to change diapers, it takes it isn't just going to do it. You have to get somebody that's big. It's hard work. I feel sorry for nursing homes that way. But you were interested. Blue Ridge one of the good nursing homes when you were there.
Blue Ridge was one of the best nursing
First,
homes at the time.
Mrs. Mama run the place like a dictator.
Sorry. I know they've been walking in the morning, Mrs. Abrams, and all they do is be sniffing to make sure they didn't smell anything, to make sure I mean, they checked everybody. It was it was a great place at that time to work. I remember you coming in on Sundays, you know, visiting your patients and.
Yeah, right, yeah.
It's a shame because I don't know of any more that are like that one was. But it was small. There was then they only had that one section.
Yeah, right, yeah.
And they had like it was like a little L-shaped thing, you know, and they had people there that were like, assisted living now would be where you'd have the people come in and they live there. That was their home. A lot of the Jewish ladies will come and that was where they stayed, you know?
Right, yeah.
But boy, she'd have their Jewish services. I mean, everything was run so nice back then, you know? It's sad because there is no place like that anymore.
No, it doesn't seem that way. I think, what's the one down 6th Street?
Homeland.
Homeland's pretty good.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Pretty good.
The United Church of Christ homes have excellent.
Yeah, Henry, that's right.
They really are. There's 2 in Carlisle, 2 in Anvil. Kindred Place, Harrisburg is a different kind of.
Kindred Place is a nice
Avian
place.
And then there's one in Effort, but they're all top rate also. Yeah.
Well, Paul's not a Kindred, yeah. And he likes it down there.
But that's more like assisted living, isn't it? That's
Well, yeah.
not really the nursing home.
Yeah.
Nursing home.
You have to be able to sort of take care of yourself, right, yeah.
And where do you go if you can't take care of yourself?
Jewish home. Regular nursing home,
Okay.
yeah, there you go. Just have family. I tell you, when you get older, it's good to have a lot of money.
We asked one question early, who was born, but I'm just curious, how many people here were patients of both Dr. Gordons?
Wow.
For those that don't know it, Dudley just retired a couple weeks ago. Thank both doctors for coming. I think this was a great presentation. I know that I enjoyed it very much. I hope all of you did. And I hope we have many more like this going forward. Thanks for taking the time out of your busy retirement, cutting down all those trees.
Hey, I didn't cut them down, they were blown down.